Hello! Welcome to Marshmallow Reads. I'm Marcy, and today I'm going to tell you about the seven books I read in September. First off, I have a new favorite spooky related book, and that is The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. This was such a fun read. I already love slasher movies, so I think this might be my first slasher book, and it was fantastic. Stephen Graham Jones does such a good job at playing with the different tropes that you normally see in slasher horror movies, the final girl, the last person to survive this horrible murderer is usually a virgin, that's a requirement for some reason. Some other stuff is oh, if you're having sex, that means you're gonna die immediately, because that's bad. And playing with your expectations on who is, the suspect and what's gonna happen to them, and are they gonna come back? Are they gonna have a revival? Oh, is there gonna be a sequel? I don't know, stuff like that was really fun. The writing style does a really good job at framing what we see as if we really are watching a slasher film. There are different perspectives, different POVs of the different characters in the story. There are scene transitions, the camera-like movements, montages, the works. And the deaths are actually pretty fun and creative. Oh my god, one of the last deaths was such a surprise for me. It made you think that it was gonna be okay, and then very quickly it was not okay. Wow, that one really got me. But yeah, it was so fun, and it is such a good addition to the teen slasher genre, and the culprit itself, the reveal surprised me, and I was able to guess one part of it right, but everything else I had no clue. If you are a fan of horror movies, especially slasher movies, absolutely check this one out. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read a volume collection of Heathen by Natasha Alterici and Rachel Deering. This was a recommendation by my friend Trey. Thank you, Trey. This series starts off with a young Viking woman who is banished from her home for something, and she sets out on a mission to try to right the wrongs of this corrupt god. And the first step on this mission is to try to free the cursed Valkyrie Brynhild. This comic has gods and demons and other creatures of lore, along with some pretty interesting humans. I am a fan of this art style, but I do have some questions. They are in I'm assuming northern Scandinavia. It's very, very snowy and very cold. The main character is wearing a bikini top and yeah, she has some furs over it or something, but girl, aren't you cold? I really enjoyed it. This book turned out to be pretty dang horny and pretty gay as well, so I loved it. I hope my library has the second volume. Oh, rating. What did I rate this? I'm pretty sure I gave it a 4 out of 5, so that's what I'm gonna go with. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next was an ARC that I got access to via NetGalley, thank you to the publisher, and that is A Letter to Three Witches by Elizabeth Bass. I had a lot of fun with this one. To be honest, this is not a fantastic literature novel, but it is a whole lot of fun, and honestly, that's all I really cared about. The main story in this one is a family of witches are banned from practicing magic, all because one of their ancestors maybe kind of accidentally started the Dust Bowl. Oops. And now the current generation, I guess around my age, so late 20s-ish, I'm assuming, this group of cousins, they are not only having to deal with not being able to use their magic, but also having to deal with this monster of a cousin, Tanith. At the beginning of the book, Tanith sends each of the cousins a letter basically threatening to sabotage their entire lives and relationships. And she gives them a week's notice for some reason. So the rest of the book is the cousins trying their damnedest to stop Tanith, and in the process ending up creating an elaborate mess. And yeah, it does absolutely suck that generations of witches are being punished for something that their ancestor did, And like, honestly, I really think that they should have the opportunity to prove that they are not as clumsy or whatever as their ancestor, so, you know, they can handle their magic. I also dislike that it feels like the family is doing absolutely nothing to push back against this banishment. Why? If I was in your position, like, magic, you have access to magic potentially, and you're doing nothing to try to like fight for it. I don't know. It was a little sus for me, but whatever. Besides that, and a couple of small to medium to maybe large plot holes, I had so much fun reading this book. Like, it took me like maybe a little bit to get into the beginning, but once I was hooked, I ran through the rest of it. There are just so many fun little things. Like, they go to visit their great aunt who's like super grumpy and like isolated and hates people, and they learn more about her and figuring out why she's like that. And also, like, Esme the rabbit was just adorably cute and dumb, and the part where they have to like turn frogs or toads into humans to, you know, do something, that was really funny. I want to talk more about this, but I need people I know or, you know, in the comments to read this book so we can talk about it. So please, if you like witches, if you like dumb magic stuff, check this one out and let me know what you think. Yeah, because really, if you don't ask a lot of questions, I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with this one. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig. And this is like a dystopian novel, so it takes place right after some sort of apocalypse event happens. You don't really know the details of it, but you do know that all the power goes out, all the internet goes out, there's no like supply lines anymore. The story mostly takes place in this northern Anishinaabe community. The story takes place in this northern Anishinaabe community in like Canada, like way far up north. So their winters are pretty harsh, and this happens around like late fall, so getting into winter. And, you know, at first it's not so bad. It's a pretty strong community. They have a nice core leadership going on, and, you know, things are tough but manageable. But then as they realize help isn't coming and they really have to get ready for winter with the limited supplies they have, stuff gets messy. And on top of that, there's also this outsider who comes in asking to join their community for the time being for safety. And he ends up causing some pretty intense tension between the already established leadership. And he's such a shitbird. Like, I hate this guy so much. Scott, like, I remember his name, he sucks that much. Like, one of the things that is going on during this time, getting ready for winter, is the big worry about the food supply. And in previous times, this community did have the knowledge of hunting. That was part of their traditions. And over time, because of some colonial influences, I'll say, those traditions, along with the languages, started to die off. And at the moment, only a few people know how to hunt and can gather moose and add that to the stockpile. And this asshat, Scott, he is at some point complaining about the youths in this community and how they don't know how to hunt or trap, and as if it's their fault, you know, that it isn't a part of their culture anymore because the white man has been working for generations to try to stomp it out. Yeah, that one was frustrating to read. Whenever I'm reading these sorts of like dystopian novels, I like to think about like, okay, where would I be in this situation? And let me tell you, I would be like 99% fucked, because I can't hunt. I've never attempted to hunt. I don't like the cold that much. Like, I like it more than summer, but not like when there's no heating and I have to like chop down trees for my own heat supply. I would not be surviving very far into the winter without massive amounts of outside help. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It was a pretty short read. I think I listened to it on audiobook all in one day. It was pretty good. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I've already talked about this one in my Halloween horror recommendation video, but next up is Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. And Like I said before, I am such a sucker for this cover. It is absolutely gorgeous, and it very much, it does give me a lot of like Blade Runner vibes in Mexico with vampires, which I really liked. Although it's not necessarily as cyberpunky as I expected it to be, but it's okay. It still turned out really interesting. In this book, vampire families and police clash in the streets of Mexico, and each of these fights result in civilian casualties. And I read this as a metaphor for the violence that the cartels and the military in Mexico are responsible for. But, you know, if you don't necessarily want to read into that, you don't have to. The surface story itself is also really interesting and fun. Yeah, in this world, the main character, oh, I already forgot her name. That's okay. The main lady, she meets up with this like 17-year-old kid who's like currently homeless, just like trying to get his life in order, and they end up becoming friends? Friends-ish at the beginning, for sure. They're definitely not very, or she's not very warm to him, but you know, she warms up to him eventually, and it's nice. So part of the story is like she is running away from this other family of vampires who kind of slaughtered her entire family of vampires, and in Mexico City, in this like alternate world, apparently there are no vampires allowed within the city walls, but like, really? That's not gonna happen. So she has run from like the northern states of Mexico to the city of Mexico City to try to escape this other family of vampires, and of course they're gonna follow her there. So she has to fight them and try to find help and try to get out, and you're kind of following this process. I really like the description of the different vampire species / families. All across the globe there are different types of vampires. Like you have the Chinese hopping vampire, the more like Nosferatu vampire in like the Germany region. The different factions fight against each other, and it is pretty vicious and a little bit gory. It was really cool to see how the different styles or factions of vampires fight each other, and oh yeah, it was pretty intense. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Oh, another witchy one. This is Mooncakes by Suzanna Walker. The art is by Wendy Zhu, and the lettering is by Joamette Gill. This is a story of love and demons and family and witchcraft, and it is so wonderfully witchy and fall and Halloweeny, and it's so very good in every single aspect. I adored this one. Our main character Nova is living with her grandmothers, and the grandmothers own this like magical bookshop that witches and other supernatural beings and people shop at. And Nova is in a phase of like when she should be doing an apprenticeship, which normally is done outside of your hometown, but she has chosen to stay here because I don't know how far in her past, but her parents did pass away, so she's, you know, in a bit of a tough spot in her life right now, but her grandmothers are so stinking supportive. I love them very much. And then one day when Nova is investigating this forest that people have said they've seen this like spooky white wolf in, she is reunited with an old childhood friend, and they're back in town after, I don't know if they ran away from home or something like that, but for reasons, they are back in town and they need Nova's help, and they team up together and just rekindle that friendship and eventually a relationship, and it is so absolutely adorable. Like, oh, it's fantastic. Like, I really hope that no harm ever comes to them after the end of this book. Like, that's probably not the case, but that's what I really hope for them. Oh yeah, I love the character designs, like all around fantastic character designs, including the little forest creatures. Like I might put it here. They're so stinking adorable. Oh my gosh. And I loved the non-binary rep with Tam, and like Nova just being a normal witch girl who happens to have hearing aids. I also really liked that seemingly everyone involved learned some good conflict resolution skills. The magic fights were really fun and used interesting tactics. We had some good personal growth from the main characters, and their relationship development felt realistic and Just like I said, really cute. If you couldn't tell, I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, this is the last book I read in September, and a pretty big disappointment. I really wanted to like this one because I paid a full $17 for it, brand new. Mistake. It was Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. So, as you can guess by now, if you didn't know, I love witches. All things witchy. Well, most things witchy. Because I didn't really like this one. But the synopsis from Goodreads says, for more than 200 years, the Owens women have been blamed for everything that has gone wrong in their Massachusetts town. And that set me up for some vague but also kind of specific expectations. But then when I read the story, that never comes up again. I'm pretty sure most of the story doesn't take place in Massachusetts. I thought they were gonna have to deal with some sort of conflict with their community, like the family versus the community. But no, most of it, like, we barely get to see them interact with the people outside of their family, except for like 2 or 3 people. And really, it's just to see how these outsiders swoon over these women and girls. I don't understand the hype behind this book. Like, it's you know, not new. It's 25 years old, but like, I still hear so much talk about this one when I like search witchy books or whatever. No! I had such a hard time getting connected to any of these characters. Mostly I think it's because of my age. So the characters that we focus on are 2 sisters who are like mid to late 30s, I think, or maybe even 40s. And they have been apart for a while. They drifted away. One, Gillian, she is like just really bad at love and happens to have just come out of a really abusive relationship and has vowed off love forever, but obviously, or at least to me, it was obvious that she does fall in love again in the pages of this book. And it's like insta-love, you know? I didn't care. Like, good for her, but eh. And then the other sister, Sally, she has 2 teenage girls. Sally's whole deal is like having to watch your little girls grow up and need you less, and oh, what is your role if not a mother? And that bored me to tears. Like, I can sympathize, but I also just didn't care. And the teen girls, I forget their names. I'm not gonna look it up. The older one, she is known as the town beauty and everyone swoons over her, but then her younger sister turns 13 and cuts her hair and dyes it, and now everyone's looking at her and she can't stand it, and they fight and blah 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 blah. I don't know why I'm so mad at this book, but I am. So I'm like at an age and a point in my life where none of my life matches up with any of these girls or women, and you know, having similarities like that isn't necessary to me connecting with a character. Like, duh. But that was the last thing I could look for, because nothing else was working for me in this book. If I didn't buy it for that whole $17, like brand new, I would have DNF'd it. Like, it maybe like halfway through, like 3/4 of the way through, like I had like maybe this much left. And I was struggling. I was like just so close to dropping it, but I knew I bought it. Like, if I buy a book, I'm generally thinking like, yes, I'm going to like this. And I didn't want to waste my money, so I read the whole thing, but why? There was no point. And how early do you find out about this thing? I'm going to get into some slight to large spoilers, just because I need to talk about it. So if you don't want any spoilers at all, go ahead, skip to the end. I don't care. But if you really don't care, which you might not, stick around. The main conflict in this book is, so like I said, Gillian just got out of this abusive relationship. Well, she did that by accidentally murdering the guy. And yes, he was a terrible human being who probably murdered some people at some point and otherwise was just absolutely shitty. And she was trying to like only a little bit poison him, but ended up completely dead poisoning him. And she has him in his car and she drives to Sally's house. Like, she lives in Arizona and I think they're like in New York. I don't know how this happened. And she brings up the dead body to Sally. He's like, hey, I haven't seen you in like 15 years, but want to help me bury this body? And then she does. And they bury him in the backyard under like some lavender plants. And the conflict builds up across the book by him, or his body, or his soul, I don't know, just creating magical mishap and mayhem in the backyard, and which sneaks into the house and just like messes with them, like, I don't know, silly little pranks, like, oh, spoiling your milk, or cutting up your favorite clothes, or, you know, whatever. And it was just so dumb. Because then eventually a detective comes by looking for this guy because he's a suspect in this murder case, and they have to tell him like, oh yeah, no, he's not here, but don't worry, he's not going to cause any trouble from now on. And the detective, who is like insta-love with Sally for some reason, he just accepts it and leaves. And then Sally, who is a goody two-shoes and like can't keep it in, decides to immediately go to his motel room to tell him, and she does, and he doesn't care for some reason. And at the very end of the book, the resolution comes in that the detective finds this random dead guy out in the desert and like manipulates the findings, the teeth, whatever, so that this guy is actually the guy that they murdered. And it's all fine because he's dead and now they're not going to get charged for murder. But then, like, okay, so you're saying that justice means that now there's just a random dead guy who's never going to be properly identified? I don't know. I'm rambling, I know, but this book made me so mad. I will not be reading any of the other books in this series. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, but now that I'm thinking about it, it probably should have been a 2. Okay. Ooh, breathe. I need to calm down a little bit after that last one. All right, that is it for me this week. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings today, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, consider liking and subscribing, because why not? And then also do something nice for yourself, do something nice for someone else.